I didn't lose my business overnight. I lost it slowly, while trusting the one person I thought would never hurt me. The truth is, betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the brother who calls you family, while quietly pushing you out of everything you built. My name is Michael Turner. I'm 66 years old. And before you see what happens next in my life, subscribe to this channel. If you've ever trusted someone with your work, your money, or your future, comment your city or country, and tell me if you've lived through something similar. Because what I'm about to share didn't just cost me a business. It almost erased my identity. I started my company from nothing. No investors. No shortcuts. Just long days, tired hands, and a stubborn belief that if I worked harder than everyone else, I'd survive. For years, I did everything myself. Sales. Accounts. Hiring. Deliveries. It wasn't glamorous. But it was mine. I missed birthdays. Skipped vacations. Worked weekends while others rested. That business paid for homes. Paid for weddings. Helped relatives when they were struggling. Including my younger brother, Daniel. Daniel was different from me. Where I was careful, he was charming. Where I planned, he improvised. Where I worried, he laughed. People liked him instantly. And that mattered. As I got older, the business grew. More clients. More staff. More pressure. I couldn't be everywhere anymore. That's when Daniel started helping. Temporarily. At first, it was small things. Talking to clients. Handling suppliers. Representing the business when I was tired. He was good at it. Too good. Customers loved him. Employees relaxed around him. And slowly, people stopped coming to me first. I told myself it was fine. I told myself this was what family support looked like. When my health started acting up, nothing serious, just age reminding me it existed, Daniel stepped in more. "Let me handle this," he'd say. "You should rest." Rest. That word felt like relief. So I trusted him. I gave him access. Authority. Control. Not on paper. In practice. That was my first mistake. Soon, he started making decisions without checking with me. Small ones at first. Changing suppliers. Adjusting schedules. Hiring new people. Whenever I asked, he'd smile. "Relax, Mike. I've got this." And I believed him. Because brothers don't compete. Right. Over time, something shifted. Employees started reporting to him instead of me. Clients asked for Daniel by name. Meetings happened when I wasn't around. When I noticed, Daniel brushed it off. "You're overthinking," he said. "You built this. Everyone knows that." But respect doesn't disappear loudly. It fades quietly. One afternoon, I walked into my own office and felt like a guest. My desk had been rearranged. Files moved. My chair replaced. Daniel sat behind the desk like he belonged there. He looked up and smiled. "Thought I'd organize things," he said. That's when the unease began. But I ignored it. Because confronting family feels worse than being disrespected by them. Then came the meeting. Daniel called a staff meeting without telling me. I found out 5 minutes before it started. I stood at the back of the room as he spoke. Confident. Clear. Decisive. He talked about new direction. Modern leadership. Efficiency. Words I had never used. When someone asked a question, they looked at him. Not me. I clapped at the end. Not because I was proud. Because I didn't know what else to do. After that day, things accelerated. Emails stopped including me. Accounts were handled. Clients were reassured I was stepping back. Stepping back. That phrase followed me everywhere. Daniel said it lovingly. You've earned it. You don't need this stress. But no one asked if I wanted to step back. One morning, I arrived to find my office locked. Not permanently. Just temporarily. Daniel explained it away. We needed space for a call. That was the first time I realized something frightening. I no longer knew what was happening inside my own business. At home, I tried to make sense of it. I replayed conversations, ignored red flags, excused behaviors. Because admitting betrayal hurts more than denial. Then came the day everything changed. A client I'd worked with for 20 years called me directly. Not Daniel. Me. Mike, he said carefully. I thought you should know. Daniel told us you're retiring. Retiring. No discussion. No agreement. Just announced. I confronted Daniel that evening. He didn't deny it. Instead, he sighed. I was going to tell you, he said. But it's for the best. For who? I asked. For the business, he replied. That's when I understood. I wasn't being helped. I was being replaced. He spoke calmly, like someone who had already decided the outcome. You're slowing things down. He continued. You don't see it, but others do. Others. Always others. Never names. Never accountability. Just pressure. That night I didn't sleep. I sat alone, thinking about everything I built. And how easily it was being handed to someone else. The next morning, I walked into the office determined to reassert myself. What I found stopped me cold. My name wasn't on the door anymore. Daniel's was. Inside, people avoided eye contact. Not because they hated me. Because they were uncomfortable. And discomfort is contagious. I went home early. Sat in silence. And finally admitted the truth I had been avoiding. Trust without boundaries is an invitation. And I had invited my own erasure. But here's the thing Daniel didn't understand. I may have stepped back. But I never stepped away. I knew this business better than anyone. Its habits. Its weaknesses. Its dependencies. And I knew something else too. Daniel thought control came from visibility. From sitting at the desk. From speaking the loudest. He had no idea how fragile his position actually was. That night, I opened an old notebook. One I hadn't used in years. And I started writing. Not emotionally. Strategically. Dates. Changes. Patterns. I didn't confront him again. I didn't warn him. I let him believe I was done. Because when someone thinks they've already won, they stop being careful. And that's when the truth begins to surface. The strange thing about being pushed aside is how invisible it happens. No announcement. No confrontation. Just fewer questions asked. Fewer calls made. Fewer decisions shared. That's how Daniel operated now. Like I was already part of the past. For the next few weeks, I played the role he expected. I came in late. Left early. Didn't interrupt meetings. Didn't challenge decisions. People stopped reacting when I entered a room. Not out of disrespect. Out of adjustment. They were being trained. And Daniel was enjoying it. He started dressing differently. Talking differently. Using phrases I'd never heard him use before. Growth mindset. Lean operations. Scalability. Big words. Thin understanding. He brought in new advisors. Young men in sharp suits who spoke fast and listened slowly. They shook my hand politely. Then ignored me completely. Daniel introduced them as the future. That stung more than I expected. One afternoon, I overheard him say something that finally snapped something inside me. I built this company to what it is today, he told them confidently. I didn't interrupt. I didn't correct him. I simply noted the moment. Because lies repeated long enough become truth, unless someone remembers the details. And I remembered everything. That evening, I went through old files at home. Not paperwork. Memories. Client histories. Supplier relationships. Unwritten agreements built on trust, not contracts. The kind of things no outsider ever understands. Daniel had charm. I had context. And context always wins in the long run. The next sign came from the staff. A senior employee, someone who had been with me for over 15 years, approached me quietly. "I don't like how things are going," he said. I didn't ask questions. I didn't complain. I just listened. "They're changing systems," he continued. "Cutting corners. Rushing decisions." That didn't surprise me. Daniel always believed speed meant intelligence. But speed without understanding breaks things. Slowly. Expensively. A few days later, Daniel made another move. He changed the payment structure. Not maliciously. Just confidently. Too confidently. Clients noticed. Some didn't like it. One called me directly. "I don't recognize this place anymore," he said. I told him nothing. But I heard everything. At the office, Daniel started holding leadership meetings. Without me. Then, one afternoon, he did something bold. He removed my access to internal systems. Not aggressively. Quietly. Passwords. Updated. Permissions. Restructured. He framed it as efficiency. "You don't need to deal with this anymore," he said. "I'm protecting you from stress. Protecting me. From my own life." That night, I sat alone and laughed softly. Not because it was funny. Because it was predictable. People who rush to control forget one thing. Dependency. This business didn't run on software. It ran on relationships. And most of those relationships weren't written down. They lived in memory. Mine. The following week, Daniel made his biggest mistake. He announced an expansion. New contracts. New commitments. New expenses. Without understanding the timing. Without understanding the history. He assumed growth meant forward motion. He didn't see the cracks forming underneath. Suppliers hesitated. Delivery timelines slipped. Clients asked questions. Daniel blamed. Transition issues. He blamed me indirectly. "He's still adjusting," he told people. Adjusting. Like I was the problem. That's when I made my first silent move. Not public. Not dramatic. I made a call. Then another. Then another. Old contacts. Old partners. People who trusted me. I didn't ask them to choose sides. I simply asked questions. And the answers told me everything. Daniel's version of the business wasn't trusted yet. It was tolerated. That difference mattered. One evening, Daniel confronted me. "You've been talking to people," he said. Not accusing. Observing. I looked at him calmly. "I've been answering calls," I replied. He frowned. "They should come to me now." That sentence said it all. Control. Not collaboration. I nodded. "Then earn it," I said. He laughed it off. But I saw the irritation. The doubt. Because deep down, he knew something felt off. Over the next few days, pressure built. Small problems stacked up. Nothing catastrophic. Just friction. Delays. Confusion. Miscommunication. Daniel stayed later than usual. Snapped at people. Made faster decisions. Bad ones? Speed was becoming panic. One afternoon, I walked past a meeting room and heard raised voices. Daniel arguing with an advisor. "Why didn't you tell me?" Daniel demanded. "Because advisors sell confidence, not responsibility." That night, I wrote again in my notebook. Patterns were emerging. Clear ones? And Daniel still believed I was finished. That illusion was protecting me. Then came the moment that confirmed everything. A major client paused their agreement. Not cancelled. Paused. Because they wanted reassurance. Not from Daniel. From me. Daniel tried to handle it himself. It failed. The client called me directly. "I need to hear it from you," he said. "Is this still the same company?" I paused before answering. Yes, I said carefully. But only if it's run the right way. That answer changed things. When Daniel found out, he was furious. You're undermining me, he snapped. No, I replied calmly. I'm reminding them who we are. He stared at me. For the first time, he looked unsure. That night, he made a decision. He tried to finalize things. Push me out completely. He called for a formal discussion. Tomorrow. I agreed. Not because I was afraid. Because I was ready. I knew exactly what he planned. And I knew exactly what he didn't. He believed authority was permanent once taken. He didn't realize it was borrowed. And borrowing always comes with conditions. That evening, I didn't sleep much. Not from anxiety. From focus. Because tomorrow wasn't about confrontation. It was about exposure. And Daniel had no idea how close he was to losing everything he thought he controlled. The meeting room felt smaller than usual the next morning. Not because the space had changed. Because the balance inside it had. Daniel arrived early. Too early. His laptop was open. Papers neatly stacked. Coffee untouched. Preparation driven by fear always looks like confidence at first glance. He didn't look up when I entered. Let's keep this professional, he said. That was new. I sat down slowly. Professional meant one thing. He was no longer talking as my brother. He was talking as someone who felt cornered. He started listing numbers. Revenue projections. Expansion timelines. Operational restructuring. He spoke quickly. Too quickly. Like if he stopped, the ground beneath him might crack. This company needs forward momentum, he said. And I need full authority to make that happen. I nodded. Go on, I said calmly. That unsettled him. People expecting resistance get nervous when they don't find it. He slid a document across the table. A revised management structure. My role had been reduced to advisor. No decision power. No operational access. A ceremonial title. A polite erasure. This protects everyone, he said. I didn't touch the paper. Instead, I asked one simple question. Who approved this? Daniel hesitated. I did, he said finally. I leaned back. That's interesting, I replied. Because that authority was never yours alone. His jaw tightened. You gave me control. I gave you responsibility, I corrected. Not ownership. Silence. Thick. Uncomfortable. He tried to regain momentum. You're holding the company back, he said. People don't see you as leadership anymore. That hurt. But pain doesn't always mean weakness. Sometimes it sharpens memory. Which people? I asked quietly. He waved his hand vaguely. Everyone. I smiled faintly. Then why do they keep calling me? His eyes flickered. There it was. The crack. He stood up. This is exactly what I mean, he snapped. You're interfering. No, I replied evenly. I'm stabilizing. That word bothered him. Because stability doesn't belong to the impatient. He ended the meeting abruptly. We'll finalize this later, he said. I have work to do. As he walked out, I noticed something small. His hands were shaking. Not visibly. But enough. The next few days were chaos disguised as productivity. Daniel pushed harder. More meetings. More emails. More changes. Staff started burning out. Confusion replaced clarity. And mistakes began surfacing. Minor ones at first. Incorrect orders. Missed follow-ups. Overlapping commitments. Nothing fatal. Yet. Then came the supplier issue. A long-term supplier, someone I had worked with for nearly 2 decades, delayed shipments unexpectedly. Daniel confronted them aggressively. Threatened penalties. The supplier didn't respond. They called me. I don't recognize his tone, they said. I recognize yours. That sentence told me everything. I didn't intervene. Not yet. I wanted Daniel to feel the pressure fully. Because people don't learn while protected. They learn when consequences knock. A week later, cash flow tightened. Not because the business was failing. Because trust was. Clients delayed payments. Suppliers demanded reassurance. Daniel blamed the market. Then blamed the staff. Then quietly blamed me. He's still influencing people, he muttered in a meeting. I wasn't even there. Fear always needs a villain. One evening, a junior manager approached me hesitantly. They're saying you're stepping away, she said. I raised an eyebrow. Who's saying that? She hesitated. Daniel. I nodded. That's interesting, I replied. Because I haven't stepped anywhere. Rumors spread quickly when truth isn't anchored. And Daniel was losing his grip on the narrative. He stopped sleeping. I could see it in his eyes. Dark circles. Short temper. Forced smiles. One afternoon, he made another critical error. He confronted a senior employee publicly. Raised his voice. Questioned loyalty. That room went silent. Respect doesn't survive humiliation. It evaporates. After that, people stopped correcting him. They let mistakes happen. Not out of rebellion. Out of exhaustion. That's when real damage begins. Late one night, Daniel called me. Not as a leader. As a brother. I need you to stop, he said. Stop what? Existing? I can't run this with you hovering, he continued. I paused. Then why does everything fall apart when I step back? I asked calmly. Silence. Heavy. You wanted control, I said. This is what control feels like. He hung up. The next morning, things escalated. A major partner requested an urgent meeting. With both of us. Daniel walked in confidently. Too confidently. The partner didn't waste time. We're concerned, he said. Decisions are being made without understanding the foundation. Daniel defended himself. Talked numbers. Charts. Strategies. The partner listened politely. Then turned to me. What do you think? He asked. Daniel froze. I chose my words carefully. I think growth without memory is dangerous, I said. And memory is being ignored. That room changed instantly. Daniel's authority cracked, not publicly, but permanently. After the meeting, he exploded. You're sabotaging me, he yelled. I didn't raise my voice. You're sabotaging yourself, I replied. That night, Daniel made his boldest move yet. He tried to lock me out completely. Email access revoked. Office entry restricted. Staff instructed not to involve me. He thought distance would erase influence. He forgot something important. Trust doesn't disappear when doors close. It just waits. The following week, the board, quiet until now, requested a review. Not an investigation. A review. Daniel panicked. He called me again. Not angry this time. Desperate. We need to align, he said. They're asking questions. Good, I replied. They should. He swallowed. What do you want? He asked finally. That was the first honest question he'd asked in months. I answered truthfully. I want the company protected, I said. Even if that means protecting it from you. He said nothing. Because deep down, he knew. The pressure was no longer coming from me. It was coming from reality. And reality doesn't negotiate. The board meeting was scheduled for next week. Daniel thought it was about reassurance. He didn't realize it was about reckoning. And for the first time since this all began, I felt something unexpected. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Clarity. Because the truth was finally catching up. And Daniel was about to face the weight of everything he had rushed past. The week before the board review felt heavier than anything I had experienced in years. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just dense. Every conversation felt measured. Every email sounded rehearsed. Daniel tried to look calm. But calm doesn't live in clenched jaws and restless pacing. He arrived early every day now. Stayed late. Double-checked numbers that should have been unquestionable. Confidence had been replaced by control obsession. And control, when forced, always leaks. Staff began avoiding him. Not openly. Instinctively. They brought problems to me quietly. Not because I asked. Because they needed stability. One senior manager sat across from me in silence before finally speaking. "He doesn't listen anymore," she said. "He reacts. That difference matters. Reaction destroys systems. Listening builds them." Daniel noticed the shift. He confronted the team in a meeting meant to realign vision. It turned into a lecture. Then a warning. Then a threat. "Anyone not fully committed should reconsider their future here," he said. The room went quiet. Fear doesn't motivate loyalty. It creates exits. I watched from the side. Not interfering. Because sometimes people need to see leadership clearly to understand what it isn't. That afternoon, 3 long-term employees submitted transfer requests. Daniel dismissed it as coincidence. It wasn't. The cracks widened. The board requested preliminary documents ahead of the review. Daniel scrambled. Numbers were solid. Processes weren't. Too many decisions had been rushed. Too many relationships strained. And Daniel had ignored the one thing no spreadsheet captures: history. One evening, he knocked on my door at home. Not called. Knocked. That alone told me how far things had gone. He looked exhausted. Older. Smaller. "We need to talk," he said. I let him in. We sat at the dining table where we used to plan this business years ago. Before ego entered the room. "They're questioning everything," he said quietly. "The board. The partners. Even the staff." I said nothing. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he continued. "I just wanted to prove I could do it." There it was. Not ambition. Insecurity. "You didn't need to prove it by erasing me," I replied calmly. He looked down. "They kept comparing me to you," he said. "I got tired of it. Comparison is a dangerous fuel. It burns both sides." "You took control too fast," I said. "You didn't earn the patience this role requires." He rubbed his face. "What do I do now?" he asked. That question mattered. Because it wasn't about saving himself anymore. It was about surviving the fallout. "You tell the truth," I said. "To the board. To the team. To yourself?" He nodded weakly. But truth is heavy. And Daniel wasn't ready to carry it fully. The next day, he tried one last tactic. A presentation. Polished slides. Bold vision. Promises of future stability. The board listened. Patiently. Then they asked questions. Simple ones. Why were senior staff leaving? Why had partners requested reassurances? Why was operational authority unclear? Daniel answered defensively. Then vaguely. Then emotionally. That's when he lost them. Leadership doesn't crack under pressure. It clarifies. They turned to me. Not officially. Naturally. "What's your perspective?" one board member asked. I didn't attack. I didn't blame. I spoke carefully. "This company grew because of trust," I said. "Trust takes time. It doesn't respond well to force." Daniel stared at the table. Another board member leaned forward. "Do you believe Daniel is ready to lead alone?" he asked. I paused. Not to protect him, but to be honest. "He could be," I said. "But not this way." Silence. That was enough. The review ended without resolution. Which is worse than a verdict. Because uncertainty spreads fear. Afterward, Daniel collapsed into a chair. Not physically. Internally. They're going to replace me, he whispered. No, I replied quietly. They're going to stabilize things. He laughed bitterly. At my expense. Stability always costs something, I said. You chose the speed. This is the price. The following days were brutal. Decisions were frozen. Approvals delayed. Authority questioned. Daniel was still officially in charge, but leadership had moved elsewhere. People stopped seeking his approval. They waited. For direction. For reassurance. For me. That shift broke him. He snapped at a client. Lost the account. Not dramatically. Just quietly. The email came. Short. Professional. Final. That night, Daniel sat alone in his office long after everyone left. I found him there. Lights off. City glow through the window. I ruined it, he said without looking up. No, I replied. You rushed it. Same result. Different lesson. They're asking for a transition plan, he said. They want shared leadership again. He looked at me then. Not pleading. Resigned. I don't know if I can fix this, he admitted. That admission was the most responsible thing he had said in months. I won't humiliate you, I said. But I won't disappear either. He nodded. Because he finally understood. This was never about winning. It was about survival. The board scheduled a final decision meeting. Daniel knew what it meant. Control was no longer his to claim. It would be reassigned. Balanced. Earned again. The night before that meeting, I couldn't sleep. Not from worry. From reflection. This business wasn't just work. It was years of shared struggle. And watching it almost collapse hurt more than being pushed aside. Daniel had one last chance. Not to save his position, but to save his dignity. Whether he would take it, or fight it, would decide everything. And for the first time, the future felt close. Not distant. Not uncertain. Close enough to touch. And close enough to change. The final meeting wasn't announced loudly. No dramatic emails. No urgent tone. Just a quiet calendar invite. That alone told me everything. When leadership truly matters, it doesn't shout. It waits. Daniel arrived late this time. Not out of arrogance. Out of hesitation. He stood outside the room for a moment before entering. I noticed his shoulders. They weren't squared anymore. They were carrying weight. The board members greeted him politely. Not warmly. Politeness is what remains when confidence has been spent. The meeting began slowly. Measured words. Careful language. They talked about stability. Continuity. Trust. Not once did they mention ambition. Ambition had already failed its test. Then came the moment Daniel had been dreading. We've decided to restructure leadership, the chairperson said calmly. Daniel nodded. He had expected it. What he hadn't expected was the next sentence. This company needs balance, the chairperson continued. Experience and vision. Memory and growth. They turned to me. We'd like you to return to an active role. Daniel looked up sharply. Not angry. Surprised. Then relieved. The truth hit him at the same time it hit everyone else. This wasn't about replacing him. It was about grounding him. The board explained the new structure. Shared authority. Clear boundaries. No rushed expansions. Daniel would lead operations. I would oversee relationships, strategy, and long-term direction. The room felt lighter instantly. As if tension had been holding its breath for months. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't interrupt. When asked if he agreed, he paused. Then said something I hadn't heard from him in a long time. Yes. No defense. No conditions. Just acceptance. After the meeting, we walked out together. Side by side. Like we used to. The hallway felt different. Staff looked up. Not nervously. Hopefully. Daniel stopped near the exit. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "Not for the board. Not for the staff. For me. I thought control meant respect," he continued. "I didn't realize respect disappears when you grab it." I didn't respond immediately. Apologies matter most when they're allowed to breathe. "You didn't fail because you tried," I said finally. "You failed because you stopped listening." He nodded. "I forgot why this place worked," he admitted. "I thought speed would cover my insecurity." That honesty was enough. The weeks that followed were different. Not perfect, but grounded. Daniel slowed down. Asked questions. Actually waited for answers. Staff began speaking again. Meetings became conversations instead of monologues. One by one, strained relationships repaired themselves. Not because of announcements. Because of consistency. Clients noticed. Suppliers relaxed. Trust returned quietly. Daniel struggled at first. Letting go always feels like loss. But something unexpected happened. He became better. Not louder. Clearer. One afternoon, he came into my office and sat down. "I don't feel like I'm pretending anymore," he said. That told me everything. People don't burn out from work. They burn out from performance. Months later, the business stabilized completely. No explosive growth. No flashy headlines. Just strength. The kind that lasts. Daniel stopped chasing approval. He started earning it. And I stopped guarding my legacy. Because it was finally safe. One evening, after everyone had left, Daniel stayed behind. We stood by the window, looking at the city. "I was afraid of becoming invisible," he said quietly. "So I tried to make you invisible instead. Fear makes people cruel in subtle ways." "I was never competing with you," I replied. "I was protecting what we built." He smiled faintly. "I know that now." That was closure. Not dramatic. Not loud. Real. The kind that settles deep. Years later, people would talk about that difficult period. They'd say the company almost collapsed. They'd say leadership was tested. They'd say mistakes were made. All true. But what they wouldn't see was the quiet lesson underneath it all. That control taken too fast destroys trust. That leadership without memory collapses. And that real power doesn't erase people. It includes them. Daniel eventually became the leader he wanted to be. Not because he pushed me out. But because he stopped trying to. And I learned something too. Letting go doesn't mean disappearing. It means choosing when to stand firm. Because sometimes, the strongest move isn't fighting back loudly. It's staying steady while everything else shakes. And when the shaking stops, the truth is still standing.